Drop of a really historic event, which was the 155th anniversary of the Freedmen's Bank founding. As you know, I've been integral and integrated and institutionalized in the rebirth of the Freedmen's Bank legacy. But I want you to know that this legacy is part of a long history, and history never feels historic when you're sitting in it. It just feels like another day. I want you to feel like a history maker. I want you to be part of history. I want you to live your whole life. I want you to feel there's something you can do right now to make your life bigger, so that you can become integral, integrated, institutionalized in something that's transformational in your family, on your block, in your neighborhood, in your own life. That's the Freedmen's Bank legacy today. So a preacher in New York City, a black preacher, came up with the idea of the Freedmen's Bank. That's right, a black preacher. Do the research on it. And some philanthropists got a hold of the idea and went to Congress. And then they went to the president. And this was 2 months after what we call 40 acres and a mule. Well, it culminated 2 months after 40 acres and a mule. 40 acres was January 1865. They worked so hard that Secretary of War Stanton and General Sherman said, "My God, they're so industrious," meaning formerly enslaved blacks. Notice they didn't say slaves, formerly enslaved African Americans. They worked so hard, they said, "My God, they're so industrious, give them a mule." That was February 1865. March 1865 came the bank, the Freedmen's Bank, chartered to, quote, teach free slaves about money. You can't make this up. And then Lincoln was killed the next month. But here you have a black pastor who inspired Washington, D.C. to move, and inspired arguably one of our, if not our best president, Abraham Lincoln, to act. And that created this bank. And unfortunately, Lincoln was killed the next month because he promised blacks the right to vote. That's right, 155 plus years ago, was really the original civil rights movement. You know, and blacks got the right to vote. It's a whole nother video, but a lot of the rights that Dr. King 100 years later, and my mentor, Ambassador Andrew Young, and John Lewis, and Coretta Scott King, and all these heroes and sheroes who gave their life, a lot of the things they fought for were enforcement actions that were passed into law 100 years before, give or take, during Reconstruction. So our history is so amazing, right? So you already had the right to vote. You already had the right to assemble. Those rights were robbed from you, robbed from all of us. And I say robbed from you, meaning that you don't have to be a black person watching this video and thinking that this is for you. The civil rights movement was not about black people. It was about the freedom of all people, because you can take no pleasure from the fact there's a hole in my end of our boat. We're all in this thing together. A house divided cannot stand. That if you're white and I'm black and you're holding me back, but we're in the same house, well, hold up the same roof, right? Then we're all messed up, right? We're all not making progress, because in order to hold me back, you got to stay back too. 100 years after Frederick Douglass took over the bank for Abraham Lincoln to try to run it, put $10,000 of his own money in that bank, called about $20 million today. 100 years from that, here comes Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., another preacher, can't make this up, another preacher who decides to pursue civil rights. And so you had social justice, you had this Declaration of Independence. By the way, I'm not driving. This is my man Cash driving over here. Hold on, you can see him. Yep, that's my man Cash. He's driving, but don't be nervous. 100 years later, you had these civil rights icons who stepped up and who stepped in the breach. And Dr. King basically gave his life to take down a whites only sign. He gave his life not to make you an entrepreneur, not to make you a homeowner at scale, not to get you educated at scale. Check this out now. The most amazing prophet of the 20th century. Thank you, Bernice King, Martin Luther King III, Dexter King for giving Yolanda King for giving your father to us. Dr. King Thank you, Andrew Young's children, for giving your dad's life to us, loaning it to us. These heroes and sheroes gave their life to take down a whites only sign 100 years later, because Jim Crow was created after Reconstruction to restrict us from the advantages that were gained after the fight for civil liberties, Civil War. And when Abraham Lincoln gave his life, Frederick Douglass loaned his life, and Harriet Tubman risked her life so that we might have life. Then Lincoln fell away, an idiot president took over, Andrew Johnson, who tried to turn back everything that Lincoln had done. And one of the things he did was move federal troops out of the South. So in many ways, Dr. King's civil rights movement 100 years later, a pastor who then came up and influenced, once again, influenced a president, a pastor who influenced the president to act. That pastor, Dr. King, calls for civil rights bills to be passed by a new president, inspired by, John F. Kennedy, but acted upon by President Johnson. And so here we are today, and then Dr. King gets assassinated. I'm going to Memphis right now. Gets assassinated in Memphis on the eve of his movement for the Poor People's Campaign, inspired by Marian Wright Edelman of the Children's Defense Fund, who's still alive and very, very active today, and is an amazing woman, inspired by Marian Wright Edelman to pursue the issue of poverty and, I would say, wealth creation, but I think they were just focused on poverty. And when he gets killed, Dr. King, on a balcony, April 4th, I believe it was, 1968. So it's not like you got the memo and you screwed it up. You just never got the memo. That's my last book. I want you to get the memo, and that's why I was in Washington, D.C. this week. That's why we worked to rename the Freedmen's Bank from the U.S. Treasury Annex Building, and it's that way today. And that's why we work with Secretary of the Treasury, Mnuchin, and Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, Justin Muzinich, and the whole team there, and Comptroller of the Currency Otting, and FDIC Chair McWilliams. That's why we work with all these folks, and the NCUA Chair as well, Rodney Hood, to get all the financial regulators together, to get the most prominent, the most significant appointment of a black in banking in the history of this country, and arguably the biggest in the world, my friend Thasunda who is now Duckett, who is now CEO of Chase Consumer Bank. So last time I checked, $700 billion on that panel 2 days ago, at the Treasury Department 2 days ago, for the Freedmen's Bank Forum, which you can now watch online, and you'll see something very special today from that session together. This movement continues today. History doesn't feel historic when you're sitting in it. It just feels like another day. What are you going to do with your day? What I'm doing with mine is opening another Hope Inside location this week in Memphis, our 151st location with First Tennessee Bank, First Horizon, going on a bus tour, taking the Comptroller of the Currency and the FDIC chair on a bus tour through Memphis, and showing that we are economic opportunities yet to be fulfilled, that our communities are untapped potential, that our inner cities are ripe for turnarounds, and that we are value propositions that just need investment, access to capital, access to opportunity, and mentoring, and we will explode in a positive way. New GDP, gross domestic product, income opportunities for not just ourselves, but for all of America, and arguably in Africa, all of Africa, in Asia, all of Asia, in Latin America, all Latin America, in the Middle East, for the Middle East, and tying all this stuff together, untapped potential for the world. Let's go. Pass this on. Let's go. John Hope Bryant.